All right, B-listers, you know the drill.
This is your official spoiler alert for the episode.
If you don't want any spoilers, stop the episode now.
And if you don't care about spoilers, hold on to your seats because this episode starts
Now.
Hi, Liz.
Hi, Court.
And hi, B Critics family. Welcome to another episode of the B Critics podcast.
This week's movie has all the lore of a drama with the twists and blood pressure spikes of a thriller. It has a star-studded cast that does not disappoint, and the end, I mean, if you could guess that ending, then you probably need to go be a detective because that is a skill.
But before we really get into it, let's tell the people where to find us.
So you can find the podcast on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and YouTube at bcriticspodcast. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and follow our Instagram for all the best movie content.
Okay, I think it's time to get into the episode.
Woo.
So our guest critic for this episode is a returning guest. We have Matt on the podcast. Hi, Matt.
Hey, everyone. Thanks for having me back. I'm excited to talk about this one.
Thanks for returning. So if you haven't listened to it already, Matt did one of our first episodes with us, the Jurassic Park episode. That was a great episode, so be sure to go check it out. The link will be in our show notes. But this week, we're talking about a very different movie. So Matt, do you want to introduce the movie?
Yeah, sure. So, me, for one, I will never be tired of Daniel Craig's Foghorn Leghorn KFC draw because today we're talking about Knives Out.
Woo!
Fabulous movie. And I totally agree. We're going to spend a lot of time talking about Daniel Craig today. That is for sure.
How can we not?
Yeah. Occupies any part of my day. If it has Daniel Craig brought up, then I think it's time well spent.
There you go.
Opinion.
Agreed.
All right, so I'm going to run through the movie of the episode real quick. Knives Out follows the unfortunate story of a wealthy family whose patriarch, Harlan, dies suddenly and leaves absolutely nothing to any of them in the will. When Harlan died, how Harlan died is somewhat of a mystery, but the family is determined to pin it on the longtime caretaker, Marta, after finding out she is the sole recipient of the estate. Each family member has their own likeliness of being involved, but somehow Marta is the most suspicious of all. That is, until a key piece of evidence is discovered and all the pieces fall into place. This whodunit ends in a wild twist. The main suspect hasn't done it, but then who has? Were the local police right all along, or will Detective Benoit Blanc uncover the truth?
Wonderful.
We'll
That's a
find out.
wonderful log line. Like, that's such a good, I don't know, all these like mystery movies I feel like always have really good plot summaries.
Mm-hmm. This one was like super long in the making too.
Mm-hmm.
It was like supposed to start like I think in 2017, and then like Looper happened, and then Star Wars and all the things, and it didn't actually come out until 2019. So
Yeah, I think he originally wrote it in 2005. Is that right?
Oh, I have
Yeah,
no
he
idea.
wrote
That's
it a
long
long
ago.
time before it was actually made and I think he wanted to make it after he made Looper, but then he got hired to do Star Wars. And to me, it's really interesting that this movie comes directly after The Last Jedi because this movie is so universally liked and enjoyed. Like, I haven't met a person who just like straight up dislikes it. Like, you either like it's pretty well liked, but but Last Jedi is one of the most toxic like split movies. Like, you either like really like it and you think it's like one of the best Star Wars movies, or you just completely hate it.
So we're talking about Rian Johnson, and I watched this interview with him where he basically said like I would be surprised if there weren't people that like absolutely loved it but also absolutely hated The Last Jedi.
Yeah, I think this movie did a lot to get him back into people's good graces a little bit,
Yeah, for
which,
sure.
I mean, I've always found that a little ridiculous because, I mean, I guess that's just like toxicity of fandom is that everyone turned on him so much.
Yeah.
Because I remember like having to convince some of my friends to go see this movie because it was directed by him. I was like, oh, it looks really good. Like Daniel Craig's in it. The cast looks incredible. It's like a classic mystery thriller. But they were just so upset over Star Wars that they didn't trust him. And I for one, real like The Last Jedi. I don't really like any of those new ones a ton, but his, I feel like he was actually going for something in that movie that's different than a lot of Star Wars movies. But it's just crazy that those two are back to back because this is one of, I feel like, the more universally liked and enjoyed movies of the last 5 to 10 years. I feel like everyone
Agreed.
kind of connected with it when it came out.
Yeah, Ryan Johnson has said too that because he was getting so much backlash from what Jedi movie? What
The
The
the Star
Last
Last
Wars
Jedi.
Jedi.
one? Yeah, The Last Jedi. Because he was getting so much backlash, he like used that as incentive to make this movie like fantastic. Because he was like, "I'll show
Hmm.
them."
Yeah, and it worked out for him.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it did.
definitely. So this movie is 2 hours, 10 minutes long.
Hmm.
It's a mystery thriller comedy drama movie. It's like dark comedy in my opinion.
Yeah.
Rated PG-13.
Yeah. So before, like, just the PG-13 thing, it was originally going to be rated R because they threw bad words around like crazy throughout
Hmm.
filming.
Mhm.
But Ryan Johnson wanted like young adults to be able to go and see it. So they had to refilm a lot of scenes to take out words. So like when Ransom comes in for the first time and he says that line that's just so stupid and you're like, what are you, 5? It's because they wanted it to be PG-13 so that more
Mm,
people could enjoy it.
Yeah,
that
that's
makes
really interesting.
sense.
I think it works that it's not super like explicit because it makes
Hmm.
it gives it more of a classic feel rather
Yeah.
than like um if they were just like whipping F words around and stuff,
Yeah.
like, I think it would make it a little too it would be just kind of misplaced in my
Hmm.
opinion. So
Yeah, it feels more
that's a good call on
realistic
his part.
too. Cuz
Yeah.
like with your family, like yes, you're generally yourself around them, but you're not like whipping the worst swear words around all the time
Hmm.
because typically there's children around, like there's young adults, so
Hmm.
it's just like
Hmm.
inappropriate. So this movie came out in 2019.
Yeah. It came out the same year as a lot of other like really popular movies. So we had Midsommar that year, the live action Aladdin, Little Women, Rocket Man, Booksmart, and Frozen 2, like among others. But
Hmm.
it's just kind of crazy that in 2019, so many fantastic movies
I feel like this was
came
one
out.
of the like most well liked. Like in general, people really liked this movie compared to all those other ones you just listed. Maybe Booksmart, but I feel like I don't know. I think more than Booksmart. I think people like really enjoyed this movie.
And it made a ton of money too.
Yeah,
So
it did.
Mhm.
it like
Yeah,
this is one
stupid
of the
amount.
biggest this is a huge hit and
Hmm.
it like is a little depressing that this was such a huge hit and then like not to get ahead of ourselves with the sequel they just threw on Netflix. They
Hmm.
put it in theaters for like 5 days and it made like so much money per theater like when they put Glass Onion the next one in
Hmm.
and it's like oh just put them in theaters like everybody wants to go see them. So it's
Hmm.
just I don't know. Like this isn't that long ago and like this is a movie flipping basically a 35 million dollar budget and it made like $320 million, which is
Yeah.
crazy now for
I
an
don't really
original
understand.
story.
I don't really understand why it's like Netflix bought the rights to the Knives Out stories. And
Hmm.
like so Glass Onion is on Netflix, but like Knives Out is not. You have to
Yeah.
rent it.
Yeah, I guess it's just like it's kind of like how maybe they are now, but for a while, even though Marvel owns the rights to Spider-Man now, like none of the Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans were on Disney Plus for a little bit because Sony like partially they like technically I think lease the rights sort
Hmm.
of.
Mm,
Um, so it's probably just like they just bought the rights specifically for those, and then whoever the studio, I think it's like Lionsgate made this
mhm.
movie, um, still owns them. So it's kind of their decision to do whatever with this one.
Yeah. I read the like I guess it's an autobiography of the CEO of Disney.
Hmm.
And there's like an entire chapter where he talks about like negotiations with other production companies to get rights to like sequels and get rights to like host that show or that movie on their
Hmm.
platform. And it's like so strange what other companies will like give up versus what they're willing to hold on to. And I don't know, to me it doesn't make sense. Like, why not just like lease it? I don't know, Disney Plus, like pay a certain percentage to them to have it on your thing. I don't know, it's silly.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm not sure if Lionsgate has some sort of direct ties with a streaming service, but this movie is you have to buy it or rent it, I'm pretty
Mm-hmm.
sure, like to
Yeah.
watch it on streaming. So, yeah, it's surprising. I feel like if they put this movie on Netflix, it would be the number one movie on Netflix for like a
Mm-hmm.
month or something. Like
Yeah,
Yeah.
it would
agreed.
have a really big second life.
Yeah.
Agreed.
Amazon Prime's making $4 a pop to rent it, so
Yeah.
Maybe that's what they're like holding out on. Maybe they're doing it on purpose
probably.
because they're trying to like squeeze what they can out of Glass Onion and then bring this one back.
Mm-hmm.
So we already talked about Ryan Johnson a bit. We're going to talk about him a lot more um,
Mm-hmm.
later in the episode. But this movie also has a pretty notable cast. So just to name a few, we have Daniel Craig, Chris Evans, Anna de Armas, Jamie Lee Curtis, Ricky Lindholm. Um, and this movie is known for being like a modern version of a murder mystery story. I think it's like really one of the best like original stories we have in like recent times in the last 5 to 10 years. It was a
Mm-hmm.
very critically acclaimed movie. It was nominated for 3 Golden Globes, including Best Original Screenplay. Um, I think with its first like showing in theaters, it netted like a ridiculous amount of money. Matt, you touched on it a little bit,
Hmm.
but I think it was a very, very successful movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it was, and I think the cast is a big part of that. Um,
Mm-hmm.
like you brought up some of the names. Like, I mean, Chris Evans. This is like one of the things he does. Like, this is like right smack dab, kind of in the like tail end of the whole Captain America thing.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
And so this is one of the first times I feel like for that whole decade that we saw him do something that wasn't play Captain America because he was so tied up
Yeah.
in that for forever. And to me personally, it makes me sad because I think this is the best he's ever been in anything is in this
Mhm.
movie. He's so like weird and funny and like threatening all at the
Mhm.
same like the whole time. Like you're like he plays this part so well where you're like you want to trust him but you don't. Like
Mhm.
he looks great too like the whole time. So it's
Yeah.
just to me I'm like damn, like we could have seen him do like stuff like this all
Mhm.
throughout the 2010s but we got him playing Captain America like a
Yeah, I
thousand
agree. I was
times.
so impressed. I was like, I didn't even know that Chris Evans could actually act.
Act, yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
think
he
he's I think he's pretty similar to James Franco, where he's really good at that side character role, like
mhm,
the supporting character. But the second you put him in the main role, like it just falls apart for some reason.
mhm.
I
Yeah, I
I don't know.
agree. And
He's the main part in Captain America.
Y'all are just shitting
yeah,
on Captain America.
he doesn't
Well, I
have to
don't think
do a
it's
lot
his
in Captain
fault.
America though.
I
In
think
the
it's
first,
just like the
yeah,
nature of the film. Like he doesn't have to do a lot of acting. Like there's no range that's necessary. I'm not saying that like those movies are bad or that he does a bad job. I'm just saying like this is a movie where he gets the opportunity to like actually show that he can really act other than just
yeah,
coming up and being like, "I'm Captain America."
Hmm.
yeah, and him and Ana de Armas too in this movie, I feel like have a lot of on-screen chemistry. Like they like play really
Mhm.
well in scenes together, which is
I
really
thought there was gonna
funny.
be like a little love sequence. Like I thought they
Yeah,
were gonna like get together at the end.
yeah, that's a smart decision, I feel like, in the movie, and it is kind of funny because I feel like both of them are so good in this movie, and every movie they've made after this is like, oh no, like they just made a movie for Apple that I watched called Ghosted, and it was so bad to me, and
Aw.
they have no chemistry in it at all, and it's like, are these the same two people who were in and Knives Out together. Like, how is this happening?
That's
Weird. I
wild.
haven't seen that.
It's not good. It's like straight
Maybe
up not good.
maybe Ryan Johnson deserves more credit than
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's
usually
Probably.
given to
speaks
him.
to the power of working with great filmmakers, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hmm. He also talked a lot about, I watched an interview of his about how having like a lot of experienced actors. So for example, he said Jamie Lee Curtis, he was like, she was incredible like in the acting front, but she also like had this way of like bringing a vibe to the group that like everybody instantly had a lot of chemistry and like worked really well
Mm-hmm.
together and took it very seriously.
Hmm.
Yeah, you are the sum of the 5 people you spend the most time with. So if
Yeah,
you're
Oh.
hanging
and she's
around
a
all these like all stars, and you're probably gonna be amped up too.
yeah, she's a very trusted face. I feel like
Hmm.
people just really cling to her when they see her on screen.
I love
The
her.
Yeah, I
Hmm.
think this movie, one thing that's really cool about it is that the cast is like obviously really stacked or whatever. Like there's a lot
Hmm.
of people in it who are famous, but it's not like they're just throwing like they seem like chosen for a reason. Like it's
Yeah.
Yeah.
like, they it's not like they're just, oh, let's just get as many movie stars like as possible in a movie. Like they
Hmm.
picked really good actors for those parts. Like Toni Collette, for instance, who plays she's like the widow of Harlan's dead
Hmm.
son.
Yeah.
She is like fantastic. Like, and she's
Yeah, she
coming
Hmm.
did
off,
such a good job.
yeah, Hereditary, which is like her big recent role where she's freaking crazy in that movie. And she just brings really fun, like her and Jamie Lee always, I feel like, bring really fun, like energy, like on
Hmm.
screen. Like for me personally, I'm like, anytime I'm like, oh, Jamie Lee Curtis is going to be in this, maybe I'll check it out.
Hmm. Yeah. They all held their own really well. It wasn't
Hmm.
like one person was like pulling the group up. They were all like participating equally.
Hmm. Yeah, and
Yep.
Michael Shannon too. Like he's great in this as the like one of the sons. And Don. The funny thing that I was watching about it is Don Johnson, who plays Jamie Lee's husband in this.
Hmm.
He like so for most people, like I guess our parents or like people older than us, they would know him from Miami Vice, like the TV show. But I knew him because the first time I ever saw him in like anything was Django Unchained, and
Okay.
he plays like the plantation owner, and then in
Yeah.
this movie he's like straight up racist in this
He's an
movie too.
asshole.
Yeah, and I'm like, damn, Don Johnson picking all the fucking racist parts. What the hell?
Yeah.
Wait, okay, the scene where he's like talking about the immigrants and he like calls
Yeah,
her
that
over and then
was
like hands his plate to her, that was like all him. He was like, I'm
yeah,
just gonna act like she's the staff.
yeah. That's
It's
that scene
awful.
always makes me so uncomfortable.
It's terrible.
I like how too, like every single family member says that Marta's from a different country. They all get it
Yes.
Oh
wrong.
yeah.
Oh
Okay,
my
so I
god.
want to talk about Daniel Craig as Benoit Blanc,
Mhm.
and I want to start with his accent.
I didn't like it. I understood where it
Not
was
a fan.
going.
Yeah,
It was too much.
It was
yeah.
so much.
It is a lot. It works for me personally, but it's
Yeah.
like I've like gotten so used to it now because of watching this a bunch of times and watching like the new one. Um
Mhm.
and they obviously like make fun of him in the movie for doing it. I don't know if y'all knew this, but when they had talked about doing like a sequel, they had suggested at one point that they were going to make him do a different accent for every movie.
What?
So like he was just going to change his accent for the second movie, but then they like just scrapped that idea and thought the southern thing was really funny.
Yeah.
It is funny. That is for sure. Like it doesn't fit him at all, in my opinion. And I
Hmm.
don't know if that's just because I know him in other roles, but
Mhm.
um, I do think it doesn't kind of fit him because they had to make choices, like for example with costuming to like tone down what he looked like because he didn't exactly fit that like southern cop vibe.
His name is Benoit Blanc. That's
Yeah,
not
the
like a
character.
deep South name.
Yeah, the character choices for him specifically are just like really all over the place and wacky. I think they're like, I mean, trying to play a little bit on like, obviously, Agatha Christie is probably a massive influence on this movie, and
Mm-hmm.
her detective Hercule Poirot, he's like really like a kind of a character like Kenneth Branagh has made some adaptations recently of like some Agatha Christie novels like Death on the Nile and Murder on the Orient Express, and
Mm-hmm.
in those movies he's like playing Hercule Poirot and he has like a mustache that like twirls up and stuff. So I feel like maybe Ryan Johnson was trying to like design this character where it's like it's so ridiculous that this like guy acts this way and like,
Yeah.
but he's
Yeah.
then really good at his job too, like.
Mhm. They're all kind of larger than life characters.
Hmm.
Like they all have something that's just like played on and played on. Like Meg, she's just like this mopey teenager. It's like
Hmm.
every time you turn around, she's like crying or hugging someone or like making a mistake of some kind, and that's like her whole character.
Yeah, and the Nazi son, who
Who's like over there like
one of
taking
the funniest
videos.
things. Yeah,
The kid's a Nazi.
yeah, yeah. That line, the line about him, which I don't know if we want to talk about it now, but it's like it's one of the hardest I've ever laughed. I think in a movie theater.
Nazi child masturbating in the bathroom.
Yeah,
Yeah.
when he said that, like I was like in tears the first time I saw it.
I laughed pretty
Oh
hard
my
too. It's a
god.
good one. Okay, so then we have Ana de Armas as Marta.
Mhm. Fabulous. So
Yeah, she's
believable, so
wonderful in
perfectly
this.
done.
Hmm.
Hmm.
I
Yeah,
don't think she
she's
could have
the
done it
heart of
better.
the movie. Yeah, that
Hmm.
without her, this movie I
Mhm.
don't think works as well. Like
Mhm.
she has to play a pretty difficult part, I feel like, in this. Like
Yeah, I
Mhm.
agree.
she's like, you know, cooperating with the investigation. She's got that like, I
The
guess,
vomiting.
yeah, the
Okay, how do
vomiting
we feel
thing to
about the
tell off.
vomiting thing?
I thought it was hilarious.
Yeah, I thought it was funny because
It
it
always
opened
came at
them
a
up.
I
perfect
Yeah,
time.
yeah, it opens them up to just like a really funny like physical sight gag like that they can use, and it works super
Yeah.
well.
She does a really good job with it too.
Hmm.
Mhm.
She's another one who, like Chris Evans, I feel like we got this, and then it's like she's just been in crap now. Like
Mhm.
I can't remember the last. I mean, she just got nominated for an Oscar for Blonde, but I think the consensus on that movie is it's pretty trash.
I've never even
Except
heard of that
like,
movie.
um, but I mean, the first time I saw her was she's in Blade Runner 2049.
Hmm.
She plays a way different part in that movie. She plays like Ryan Gosling's like holographic girlfriend or something. It's
Oh.
bizarre.
That's
In this movie, though,
strange.
she's fantastic. Like this is, I
Mhm.
think, like Chris Evans, this is far and away her best role to me.
It felt very natural. Like there was
Hmm.
no part of her character that was forced and like it could have very easily gone too far, but it was like just the right amount of like being normal but also like having like something that's like a little bit like you're questioning her, you
Hmm.
know? But it wasn't too over the top. Like I don't know. I loved her. I was enthralled with her the entire movie.
Yeah, I liked all the parts too where she was going around with Daniel Craig and she was trying to like cover her tracks the whole
Hmm.
time. I thought she was super cute.
Making herself be like, oh, I can't hear you. Like, let me
Yeah.
like walk all over everything.
Or just
Let the
like
dogs run.
Uh-huh.
chucking the wooden piece that came from the terrace.
She's like a really fun like foil, I feel like, to the rest of the characters in the movie, where she's like
Hmm.
pretty down to earth and
Mhm.
quiet and everything. Obviously, that has a lot of intentionality and kind of ties in with what the themes of the movie are. But her performance is like in comparison with the other people who are playing like ridiculous over the top rich people is just a really smart. It's a smart plot device.
Mhm.
Yeah, I agree. So then we have Chris Evans. We talked about him a little bit, but in this movie he plays Ransom or Hugh Ransom to the help.
Yeah, one of the best movie sweaters of all time, in my opinion.
Yes, the
Like
cable
the
knit
movie sweater of
sweaters.
all time is Billy Crystal in When Harry Met Sally, like to the point where
Yes.
everybody now wears that as a Halloween costume. But
Mhm.
there's when they're in the restaurant together, the sweater he's wearing in that scene in this movie is fantastic. Great, way up there in the
He
history
looks
of
great the whole
sweaters.
movie. Like everything he
Mhm.
has on
Mhm,
works so well. Like you can tell he's supposed to be like the hot one in the family and like
mhm,
this like hot rod guy kind of thing. And yeah,
They also
it
do a
all
good job of
works.
making him a little bit more modern than everybody else. Like I feel like
mhm,
everybody else, like you can tell their age, and then he's like the younger, like it kind of fits his house when him and Marta go to his house, and it's like the really modern home, you know? I think he's
mhm.
kind of like representing he's trying to like branch out from the family a little bit.
Yeah, and I think that works really well with what I was kind of talking about earlier, where he like you're kind of inclined to trust him because he's the one who's like calling out all the other ones who you're being taught by the movie to hate the other people of the family because of the way that they act. So when he shows up and he's like the one that they all think's an asshole and they're like and he's like calling him out and stuff, it like works really well with you being like, "Oh, like maybe this is a person who will help
It's like a
like
double
solve
negative.
this." Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. Yeah, like
Mhm.
it just speaks to that character is definitely one of the bigger successes of this one.
Yeah. A less known character. So Frank Oz plays the like council. And if you don't know who Frank Oz is, that's like completely understandable because he's not usually in like movies where you're going to see his face. He's a voice actor and
Hmm.
he played the voice of Miss Piggy and Yoda. So
Yeah.
he's just like
How
randomly in there
random.
too, which he is using his normal voice because he's just a lawyer. So you wouldn't really
Hmm.
recognize it. But I just thought that was very interesting because it's like, who's this guy? Mrs. Piggy and Yoda.
Yeah, and I guess they met making Last Jedi because I think there is a scene in Last
Mm.
Jedi, spoiler alert, movie's like 6 years old, but where Yoda does like pop up for like 5 seconds or something.
Yeah.
Um, that's pretty cool though. Frank Oz is a total legend, so
Hmm.
Mhm.
it's cool to see him
And he's just this like
in a movie.
small part in this movie.
Hmm.
But memorable.
Yeah, very memorable.
Another person we didn't really touch on, which maybe you were going to bring up, is the fact that Lakeith Stanfield is just randomly in this movie and he plays like a super nothing part. He's like the
Yeah.
state police detective, and he's like, I mean, he's like Oscar nominated, and like he was in Get Out, he's in Judas and the
Yeah.
Black Messiah. Like he's a really big, like he's a especially during this time he was like really getting big because of Atlanta too, the TV show,
Hmm.
and he's in this movie like not doing really he's just like following Daniel Craig around. It's like anybody could have played that part, but Lakeith, it speaks to the casting of this movie that
Yeah.
it's Lakeith Stanfield.
We have
Yeah.
to have the best and nothing but the best.
Hmm.
But it is an important part because
Hmm.
he's like the normal town cop and he's like
Yeah.
the opposite of Daniel Craig's character. So
Hmm.
like
Also in
how
like every scene.
Yeah, that's
Mhm.
true. I just feel like he's
Mhm.
like meant, yeah, I guess yeah, that's true. It's just like to me he's meant to just like kind of be like the boring one.
Yeah, you're right though. Anyone could have played him. Like it
Yeah.
didn't need to be him. But he did a great job. I liked it.
But it's so much better because he plays it and he's a great actor. So,
Yeah. Another fun surprise cameo we got was Joseph Gordon-Levitt, and you don't actually see him on screen, but at the
Yeah.
very beginning when Marta's sister is like watching the news or some like article or something online about the murder, it's his voice on the that's
I think
coming
oh
she's
wow.
through.
watching like a movie.
She's watching like something about the death of this person or something. I don't know. I couldn't
I
really
thought
pick up on what she was
I think
watching.
she's just watching a movie, and in the movie, there was like a death that was happening. And then Marta's
Mm,
mom was like, "How are you playing that?
be
Didn't you and your
sensitive.
sister just like dealt
Hmm.
with this same kind of thing?" Um, I didn't realize that was his voice, but
Hmm.
Him and Ryan Johnson have pretty deep collaborative ties. I mean, I think Ryan Johnson's debut is Brick, and that stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt. That's a
And
great movie.
Looper.
You should check it out. And then he's in Looper. So I think he's actually in almost everything that he's ever made. Like in Glass Onion, he like plays a voice on an intercom or something. And then I think
So
they
random.
may have put him like in a stormtrooper suit or something in Last Jedi. So I think like he just
There
pops
he
up
is.
and yeah, and everything
Wow.
like, and you
What a
have to
cool
really look for
friendship.
him.
Because
Hmm.
that is
Yeah.
just purely friendship, right? Like there's no
Yeah.
reason to bring him on in any of those parts other than like, hey, this is my
Just
buddy. I
for
want him to be in the
funsies.
movie.
Yeah.
Hmm.
But Joseph Gordon-Levitt like dabbles in directing too, right?
Yeah. Yeah, a little
Yeah.
bit. He made that really weird movie where he's like addicted to porn or whatever, and I don't think that really went very well with
I
the
don't think
public
yeah.
masses.
I've never heard of a Joseph Gordon-Levitt movie other than ones that he's acting in.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah, I feel like everybody just knows him as like, oh, that's the guy from Inception.
Yeah.
or
'Cause that
500
was
Days of
like his
Summer.
big. Yeah,
Oh
500,
yeah.
that's another
That was a
one.
good one too.
Yeah. Okay, but the last like characters I want to talk about is just the family dynamic in general, like the way that everybody worked together.
Hmm.
I feel like there was such a believability to them all as a family, like the right amount of like getting along versus bickering and fighting, and I thought they had a really really good chemistry on screen.
Mhm.
Hmm.
There
Especially
was
with
no, go
oh,
ahead.
just with Michael Shannon's character, like being the
Yeah.
like son who's like invested in the family business, but like there's something off with him where he's like, you get the feeling like that he's gonna mess it up. It's kind of like if people watch Succession, like Kendall Roy's character in that, he like, he's the one trying to be most like his dad, but he's not. There's something missing, like he just can't do it. And I feel like Michael Shannon, like obviously he's trying to do some like kind of shady stuff business wise or whatever his character specifically. I thought it was kind of good to make them all, they're like all smart but dumb at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Like they're like smart but they're super rich, so they're all morons too. So
Yeah. I liked how all the siblings were like relatively loyal to each other too, like in the
hmm.
interviews. But then like Don Johnson gets in there and they ask him to like dish it out on some of the other characters like Walt, and he's like, yeah, sure, let me tell you everything.
Hmm. Yeah, he's just the biggest jackass in this movie. Like it's so funny. He's a really funny actor.
Okay, so I do have like a question for you guys, and I don't know about y'all. This was my second time watching Knives
Hmm.
Out. So I
Okay.
kind of like knew what was going on. But I still remember like from the first time that I watched it, who I thought actually committed the murder, like from the beginning. So I'm curious to hear like if y'all thought that somebody was responsible from the beginning. And if you did, like who did you think it was?
Um, I don't really know. Like I'm like really bad at guessing twists and
Yeah.
like figuring out who it's gonna be.
Mhm.
So I feel like the first time I saw it, like I was more inclined to believe it was gonna be Chris Evans just because like why would you put him in this movie in this part if it
Yeah.
wasn't him? But then
Mhm.
like 600 different times throughout the movie I'm like, wait, never mind, it's not him. Oh wait, yeah it is. Like I flip back and forth, but I can never figure out stuff like that in the movie, like in
Yeah.
movies like
I
I
this.
Go ahead,
I was just
Court.
gonna say I agree. Like I don't typically try to guess the end because I'm typically wrong. I think I remember I mean, I've seen this movie several times, so I honestly don't even remember like my what I was thinking like during the first time of watching it.
Mhm.
But I do remember thinking that Catherine Langford's character was always like
Yeah.
really suspicious.
That's who I
Hmm.
thought it was, her and her mom. I was like, those 2 are in cahoots. They are
No,
out for the money, like
I thought she was gonna be like worse than she ended up being because I think like her character was always not that she was with her mom, but she was like of that family, like she was the good version, right? She was like a little bit more down to earth. She's like going to school, like she was like the innocent one in this scenario. And I thought that was going to turn, and it did turn. Like she did end up turning on Marta and like telling her family about Marta's mom and stuff. And I think that
Mhm.
was the worst of it. Like I think it like the suspicion was right. Meg was not all good. But it wasn't that she like murdered Harlan for any reason.
Yeah. I just like thought she was suspicious. Like
Mhm.
her like running out and hugging Marta and like being
Mhm.
this like like she's like the person like if you win the lottery that's like, "Oh my god, like Courtney, I love you." And you're like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
"Who like I don't even know your middle name. Like who are
Mhm.
you?" kind of person and yeah.
Yeah,
That's
like
I suspected her, but
yeah, it's like fishy that she's like, "Oh, I'm definitely the nice one." Like it's
Mhm.
like, yeah, whatever.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Fake.
hmm And Christopher Plummer, we haven't brought him up. What a fucking cool role for him, and he's perfect.
Mhm.
Like looks so much like a like old, like
Shut-in writer.
yeah, like shut-in writer
Mhm.
who's like a part of this like, you know, like patriarch of a family like this.
Mhm.
Um,
I think he was
I
very believable as like being like a really like a softie with Marta and then also like
Mhm.
being able to be hard and strict on his family.
hmm And it's kind of interesting. I can't believe I just thought of this. Like it just clicked into my head. But he's the like head of the family, and he plays the head of the family in the Girl with the Dragon Tattoo American
Yeah.
version, where
Yeah.
he's the one who hires Daniel Craig to come investigate like his I think it's his daughter or his granddaughter disappearing. That's like the
Yeah.
mystery of the movie. So I guess he's just the best at this like specific role. Like let me figure out who in my family is like taking advantage of me
Yeah.
in some
It's
way.
like the same as the guy who played like Gandalf in all of the Lord of the Rings movies
hmm
or um the X-Men, the old man in X-Men. Like they
hmm
just like have that look
Yeah,
to them. Like
energy.
it's just like believable.
Mhm.
Like you are a dad, a grandpa, the person who
hmm
tells everybody when they're being idiots kind of person.
And it's that like ability to switch from like being strong to being sweet,
Yeah.
you
hmm
know?
Hmm.
He does it very well.
I was gonna ask if there was any recasting that you guys considered while you were watching, but I think we already like talked about all of that. I think we're all
Absolutely not. The
in love
casting was
with the
fabulous.
Yeah.
characters.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I can't think of anyone that I was like, I don't know, like let's get, someone else in here for this one. I mean, I
I
think
mean,
Hmm.
the only thing
everybody
they
does
could have
such a great
done,
job.
like this is probably going to be an unpopular opinion, but they could have brought somebody who was actually Southern to play Daniel Craig's part.
Or just like
But
not
Yeah.
make him Southern, let him be like from the Northeast. Like, what's the
Yeah.
issue?
I think like his part was done right. Like I feel like he did a good job with it. Like I liked it. I just think that would have changed the movie a little bit if they had had like an actual Southern person as that role.
hmm I think for me personally, like I guess he exists so much as James Bond in our minds that to me it kind of works in this movie that he's like playing a super
Detective.
ridiculous like detective southern like
Mhm.
way off the
Mm-hmm.
wall because that's so different from playing the James Bond part where he's like
Yeah.
a suave British like
Mhm.
action hero, like gritty and stuff, and then this like I liked seeing him like have fun on screen, even if his
Yeah.
accent does like suck. I don't know.
I actually thought like the accent is really like not that bad. I think the problem was, at least for me, I couldn't like connect the accent with what I was looking at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Cause like that is what people from the deep south sound like. Like they're slow and they've got the
hmm
draw and they're very sweet sounding. He just like you look at him and you're like, man, that is not what I thought you were gonna sound like.
hmm
Yeah. I was gonna talk about this later, but like Ryan Johnson wanted to put who so he made that character not knowing who was gonna be cast as the part. And
Hmm.
originally it was that person was supposed to be like really southern looking, like dressed in like all white linen suits and everything.
hmm
But when Daniel Craig was cast as that part, he basically made the decision to like pull back on that because like just like you said, Liz, like it doesn't really match his look. Like that
Mhm.
accent doesn't really match Daniel Craig. And so like it would have almost been ridiculous if they had done like gone all out with him being Southern, because it already kind of was ridiculous. And so like imagine if he was like really dressed to the part too.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's kind of funny. Like, it feels like the accent feels like something him and Ryan Johnson were like, wouldn't this be really funny if I had like a Southern accent? And then they just did it for the whole movie. That's what it always like. They were like, just two like people being like, this is hilarious.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah, it worked. I mean, it works. It doesn't work. It works. Like, you know,
It was
love to hate
entertaining.
it. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I want to talk about the way that this movie was filmed,
Mhm.
because I think it's very, very entertaining throughout. And Ryan Johnson used a lot of different methods or devices to like make that the case. So one thing he did was like he made a point in almost every shot to have multiple characters in them depth wise. So, like, for example, there's a shot where like Jamie Lee Curtis is the main part of the theme and he builds out this like triangle of depth. So, like, she has two different family members on either side of her, but like further back in the frame. And then like you'll notice like so many different shots like that. Like there'll be one where um the person who's talking is like in the front on the side, but then there's like a line of characters going back depth wise in the scene.
And they're all like on
Um
their phones or like whatever.
yeah, so you can see all of them all the way. There's one where it goes all the way back to Harlan's portrait on the wall and like he's the fourth character in depth
Mhm.
wise in the shot.
I think he also did a really good job with foreshadowing in the movie. Like, there's one, so the interrogations, which take up like a big chunk of the movie, they're all like seemingly in the same spot. So all the family
Hmm.
members come in and they're sitting in the same spot with the like halo of knives like off to the
Hmm.
Mhm.
side. But when Marta comes in, she sits in the middle of the halo of knives, which kind of like alludes to the
Yeah.
fact that maybe she's involved. And then also like what's going to happen at the end.
Hmm. And that's just the
Mm.
mark of like someone who understands, like, has their thumb on every aspect of
Yeah.
the movie,
Like people aren't
writes
going to
it.
notice this the first time they watch it, but like
Hmm.
after watching it the first time, they're going to be like, oh my gosh.
Yeah, it just seems like in this movie he truly knew exactly what he wanted to do.
Mm-hmm.
And like every single decision feels like he really understood the script that he wrote and the characters he wrote and the setting and just was able to bring it to life like so well. And stuff like that, Courtney, like you mentioned, um that stuff's always just so cool because like
Mhm.
it's not something that's gonna jump out to you when you're first watching it, but it really pays off and like it just adds so many layers to like the actual story, especially to a movie that's just like a fun murder mystery. Like it gives it, you know, like a thematic like back support basically. Like it just really it really makes a movie like this like jump out even more.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I agree. He paid so much attention to all the little details throughout. So, like, one of the things, for example, is he had a ton of clocks and phones in all the scenes showing the exact time, and it was very accurate to like when it should be in the story.
Mm-hmm.
And one thing that he said in an interview that I thought was really cool is that Apple has like a deal with movie makers where they can use their phones in stories, but they have this rule that bad guys cannot have iPhones on camera.
Oh
So
my god.
if you're watching a murder mystery movie, like if somebody's holding an iPhone and it's like
It's
recognizably an
not them.
iPhone, like they're not the bad guy.
Which is
Corporate
just like
America is so
spoiler alert
stupid.
for future murder mystery films. Like,
Yeah.
Yeah.
no
That's
one's going to
that
use
Crunching the
is
iPhones
numbers.
anymore.
absolutely batshit ridiculous that they do shit like that. That is stupid as fuck. That makes me so upset. Because people in real life who suck ass use iPhones too. Like
Yeah.
you can
We
kill
should delete
someone if you
them
have an
too.
iPhone.
Yeah.
But I think there's a scene where like Jamie Lee Curtis is like holding her iPhone and you can see the time like super clearly on it, and
Yeah.
like she's
Mhm.
not bad because she's holding the iPhone.
Ugh.
Yeah, there's a couple other things that I noted. So the My House My Rules mug, you
Mhm.
see it like very prominently at the beginning, and then at the end when Ransom is being taken into custody and the whole family is outside, Marta comes out and she's got the My House
Oh
My
yeah.
Rules mug,
Mhm.
and it's like
Yeah.
very much in shot and just great.
The last frame or like 3 minutes of this movie is like is like one of my favorite
Mhm.
last like things, like the Rolling Stones Needle Drop, like, is
Mhm.
so good. That's one of my favorite songs and albums like ever. So
Mm-hmm.
I remember being in the theater and like the movie was so good, and then they did that at the end and I was like just jubilant walking out. I was like, this is so good. Oh my
Did
gosh.
you Did you notice, like, in the final sequence that Harlan's portrait, it changes, demeanor? So,
What?
throughout the whole movie, it's,
No.
like, the serious portrait, and then once it all clicks and they announce who the real killer was, he's got a grin. He smiles.
What?
Wow,
I
that's
did
Mhm.
not
cool.
notice. They
Yep.
filmed that with a green screen in the frame
Yeah.
because they didn't have the portraits ready in time.
Hmm.
So they had
That's
to like
funny.
take like high quality pictures of the portraits and then stick them in.
Yeah.
Hmm. I love
Uh
like a credits needle drop too, and it's kind of funny because in Glass Onion, that's named after a song by the Beatles, and they like, I mean, spoiler alert again, they play it in the credits, like they don't play
Mhm.
it in the actual movie. This movie, the reason why that movie is called Glass Onion and is named after a song is because this movie is named after a Radiohead song, Knives Out,
Mhm.
which is an incredible
Too bad
song
they didn't
by
use
my
that.
yeah, by my favorite
Come
band.
on.
That song's kind of like a bit an odd like blockbuster credits like.
You coulda, like, put it on, like, while they're in the car or something, had it be, like, the
Yeah, and that's kind of a
background.
deep cut song too, because that comes from an album. I mean, everybody like people who are Radiohead fans like all of their albums, obviously,
Yeah.
but that one specifically is like throwaways from the album before that they like
Mhm.
turned into an album. So you can tell Ryan Johnson really knows his shit when it comes to Radiohead if he like is a really
Hmm.
big Knives Out guy
He's probably a
specifically.
bro. Like, if you wanna
Yeah,
hang out with him, he's probably, like, very neat.
He is
yeah.
such a weird person to me
I was
because
about
he
to say,
looks like the most like boring nerdy human you could
What
ever
does he
see,
look
and then
like?
he's just like a white dude that like looks like he plays video games in
Oh.
his house all day. Like
yeah.
there's nothing like
I
that is
can't
the
believe
vibe.
the. I was gonna say I can't believe the like weird movie artist likes Radiohead. What a fucking surprise that is!
That's so good.
um so one other thing just in regards to the way this movie was filmed that Ryan Johnson did is he said that Daniel Craig, like, I guess the last 30 minutes is like all dialogue by Daniel
Hmm.
Craig. It's just so much of him talking, but he apparently like had the whole thing like just completely memorized. Like he could recite it like as if he was acting in a play. And so Ryan Johnson lengthened the cuts that he was filming because he was like it just made for much better like scenes and cuts to just like have them
Mhm.
done all the way through because Daniel Craig just like knew his lines so well that we could.
Yep, and this
That's
is why
funny.
you cast people who are good at their job in these movies and like
Mhm.
can handle shit like this. I mean, he's one of our great actors, I feel like. So, and I feel like he's got some experience playing. I don't know if y'all have seen the movie Logan Lucky, but he's playing like a really ridiculous part in that movie too. So I feel like, you can just trust people like this, like him, who have just been there, done that to really nail down, you know, what Ryan Johnson was going for. And directors
Yeah.
talk about all the time about how they like will write a part or a scene and then the actor will play it a certain way, and it's like maybe different than what they were thinking, but it ends up working because the actors know so much about their characters specifically when they're trying to play it too.
Mhm.
Yeah, I think there's a couple different moments of that in this film specifically. I think Michael Shannon does stuff like that. Like there's a couple things that he like impromptu did that Ryan Johnson was like, I'm just going to keep that in there because it works really well for his character.
Mm-hmm.
Michael Shannon, underrated actor for sure.
Mhm.
He's great and everything.
So I wanted to spend some time talking about costuming, but we already talked about most of it, I think.
Hmm.
The only thing that I wanted to mention is the way that Ana de Armas is dressed, because I think it's very different than the typical like murder mystery story. So Liz and I just watched Clue, which is like the
Hmm.
OG like murder mystery party story, and the similar character to Marta, like the housekeeper or like kind of
She's the
person,
maid.
the maid. Well, I mean, Marta's not a maid, but is dressed like really sexy and like provocatively and like wearing like a
Hmm.
short like flapper type skirt. And Ana de Armas in an interview actually said like this movie would not have been the same if I had been a sexy nurse. And she was talking about the way that like Latin culture was portrayed in the film because she was able to like more than highlight herself, she was able to like highlight her character and the way that her character cared about and was like always like having her family in the forefront of her mind.
Mm-hmm.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, this movie, I feel like if it came out in the 80s, she would definitely be in like a nurse outfit or some stupid shit. Like
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
so it's great that she's like, we talked about this before, like even in her costuming is like really down to earth, and she's
Mm-hmm.
meant to be the kind of grounded one.
Yeah. And kind of going back to the family being like so out of the loop and just like up in the clouds constantly is when it's announced that she is getting the whole estate. The
Mm-hmm.
first thing you hear is, "Oh, were you sleeping with my grandfather?" And it's
Hmm.
like, okay, like, why is that like the first? If it was a man, is that the first thing you would have come to? No,
Yeah.
like,
What was
just
the actual line? It was not, "Are you
something
sleeping
about
with
an
my?"
anchor baby, and I don't even know what that means.
I don't
Yeah,
either.
it is ridiculous. I mean, that just shows how shitty they all are. Like, this
Hmm.
Mm-hmm.
person's done nothing but take care of their father. Like,
And the rest of them, like,
yeah,
she's just been so nice, and y'all are
yeah,
just
that is one thing I think
shitty.
I noticed on rewatch is her, just like the outfit that she's in the whole
Mm-hmm.
time is like,
Just like the cute
it
little
just plays,
cardigan and
yeah, it
whatever.
just plays really well to
I
like
love
the
her
character she
pants.
is.
The like cropped flare
Hmm.
pants. They're cute.
They worked very well for her.
Yeah, I don't know what
Mm-hmm.
that means, but I'll trust you.
Okay. um, okay, so let's talk about the story itself because this is actually like a unique story, which I think we don't get a lot of anymore because we just
Mhm.
get like comic book or book
Hmm.
adaptations or movie remakes. And this was actually like an original screenplay written by Ryan Johnson. And yes, it has elements from like a lot of other whodunit, like murder mystery stories, but I think it has like a very unique twist and unique feel to it.
Mhm.
Hmm. I think the way they move the story along too is really good. Like, just like all of these movies, I guess always normally have the part in them where you're like going back, like they normally show
Mm-hmm.
you the murder and then they go back and stuff. And I think just all of that stuff works. And then becoming like it kind of becomes a little bit of like a cat and mouse game too in the second half when they're like running
Mm-hmm.
around and
Mhm.
stuff, like they actually leave the grounds of the house. Like it they definitely keep you moving a little bit. I think the story is really good, and then obviously like the tell all or whatever is really well done to me.
Mhm. It
Yeah.
had the same feel. Courtney mentioned we just did Clue, and it had the same feel as the end of Clue, not like the very, very end, but when they're like
Hmm.
running around, like recalling all the information, except it wasn't so like frantic. There wasn't
Hmm.
this like in Clue, they're running around and they're like running from room to room doing all this stuff. And then in this movie, he's just like recalling, but like not just recalling, like fitting in the actual information. So you get like the whole story at the end, which is neat.
Yeah. I think it was really smart the way that he used dramatic irony in the story. So like the fact that you as an audience know that Marta, like, quote unquote, was involved or killed
She thinks she's
Harlan.
involved.
Like,
Yeah.
you know that whole side of the story. And so you're along the ride with her. And then it kind of gets to the point in the middle where it's like, wait, this isn't adding up. And so you still have to like piece together the story along with her. I think that was really, really effective because it, like, the first half you had that feel of like, oh, like I kind of know what's going on, and then you're like, oh wait, I don't. What's going on? Who actually did this?
And the whole like just deal with the like toxology report as like a means of like creating dramatic tension between the
And poor Fran.
characters. Yeah, Fran.
Yeah.
Fran, so the first time I saw this, I didn't know that actress. And then now I've seen Righteous Gemstones, a show on HBO. And if you haven't seen that, the person who plays Fran, she is so funny in it. Like, she is the star of that show, like, to me. And so when I was watching it this time, I was like, oh man, I forgot she was in this. Like, I love her so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, but poor her. I mean, she was like, she really took the fall for this one, I would
She got the
say.
brunt of it all.
Well,
Yeah.
yeah. To Fran's death, like, I think there was an interesting balance between like drama and like actual shit going down, and then also
Mhm.
like it being a dark comedy, because I think there were moments of levity and also moments where it was like, oh, okay, Fran is just having a morphine overdose like right in front of me.
Yeah. And her being like sort of I guess she's like sort of the key to this whole thing at some point, because she has like, the evidence or whatever. Like I liked that choice as well. Like, I think keeping you on your toes about what actually happened in regards, or like, just with the toxology report and stuff, that just was such a good tension builder and device, like having that, like, this is the thing that'll prove it or whatever.
It's always the most unlikely character. That's the one that like comes forth with like the one piece of information that's needed to fit everything together. It's like Fran, this like
I
random character that has like
Yeah.
2 lines up until that point.
Yeah.
Like,
And a weed, doesn't she have the weed stash in the
Yeah.
in the
Yeah.
house? Yeah.
That's how she knew where the toxicology report was hidden.
Yeah. Yeah, that part's really funny where they like Marta's basically almost having like a panic attack or whatever, and they like open up the box and there's all the joints in it.
So I want to talk about my favorite part of the movie, and that is Daniel Craig's donut analogy
Mhm.
about the mystery. So he said there's like the whole story is a donut, but we have a big hole in the middle that only a donut hole can fit in the hole of the donut.
but then there's another donut inside the donut hole that also has a hole.
Yeah.
And you're like, can you just like get to the point, please?
Yeah. Yeah, that part's so funny. It's like such a like ridiculous line. It plays so well with this character. He's hilarious. And
He's like
then
trying to tell her without telling her.
the reveal, like at the end, or like, I guess just the way they get him to confess or whatever is like really smart. And like,
Yeah.
I mean, just to talk about the ending, I guess we can, like,
Yeah, let's
when
do it.
when she obviously like just projectile vomits like all over him is so funny. And then I laughed super hard this time. So yeah, in the movie, like, she tricks him essentially into thinking that Fran's still alive and that she can get him, and then that kind of gets him to like be like, oh, like, I'll get off on all this stuff. Like, he admits to everything, and then she like holds in her vomit until right after he's
The
done,
perfect
and
moment.
shoots it all over him. And then another thing that made me laugh a ton was like, he tries and kills her, and he like it's the joke knife, and I laughed so
Yes.
hard where they're laying on the ground, and he
And he's
like
like,
knives, and he just goes, shit. And they like go off. That made me laugh so hard this time.
yeah. When I saw it the first time, unlike you guys, I'm the kind of person that will literally sit there. I cannot enjoy a movie unless I've figured out the ending already. And
Uh,
so I will sit there and be like, what is this? Like, this is happening and this, and like, what does this mean? And all this stuff. And then the first time I watched it, you get to the end and he does that. And I was like, wait a minute. But Harlan said that he didn't know the difference between a real blade and a stage blade. And all those blades are stage blades.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, that's not real. She's not dead. It didn't actually happen. And then
Yeah.
you hear
So
him
you
say, like,
knew.
shit. Yeah.
I was watching it
Mhm.
this time and was like, wait a second, I don't remember her dying. And
Oh, yeah.
then
She didn't die.
and
What the heck?
I was like, this is weird. And then it was revealed that it was a fake knife. And I was like, ah,
Yeah, I
yes.
mean, movies, like, I'm so gullible in movies, they can convince me to do anything, basically. So the first time I saw it, I was like, no, I can't believe it.
You know, the one thing this movie was missing, Matt?
Let's hear it.
An oiled up Jeff Goldblum
Oh,
somewhere
yeah.
in the background.
Oh, yeah, definitely. They should have done it with, I mean, I guess Chris Evans, he's like the hottest person in this movie.
Yeah, they
Maybe
could
Ana de
have. His
Armas, they're
sweaters
like
were nice
tied, I
and
feel
tight
like.
on his
Yeah.
Yeah,
chest and
he's
shoulders.
fucking huge in this
I
movie, too, because he's
know.
like looking,
Just
I guess
coming
he's
off of.
coming off the peak of Captain America, so
Yeah.
he's just
Yeah.
like massive.
Oh my God.
Okay. So that's all I have. Is there anything that we didn't touch on that y'all want to talk about?
Oh, the other thing that I wanted to mention that I thought was really cool, this is just like a total like, oh well, bro, kind of thing. But Ryan Johnson, in addition to like, all the movies that he's made, he's like directed um a bunch of TV shows and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And like obviously recently he's come out with Poker Face, which is another like it's like an episodic like mystery show where like similarly to Knives Out, um Natasha Lyonne from Russian Doll is like a raspy voiced girl who like she can figure out when anybody's lying. That's like her thing. Um and that show's like super good. So if you have like Knives Out, the movies, that's another good one to check out. But one thing that's really cool is Ryan Johnson directed 3 episodes of Breaking Bad too.
That's random.
And two of them I would say are two of the most like talked about episodes because one of them is The Fly, which is an episode where
Yeah.
the fly gets stuck, and that's like a
He
polarizing episode.
directed that?
Yeah. And then he directed Ozymandias, which is like the episode of the show, like where, spoiler alert, Hank dies. And like
That was
that
like,
is like
you gave the spoiler alert and just like immediately
yeah,
said the...
yeah, someone's gonna be like 2 episodes away and be like, yeah, but that, I mean, that episode
Okay,
came
if you
out
haven't seen Breaking Bad,
10
like I mean,
years
shame on
ago.
you. Like
Yeah,
it's too late for
but
you
that's
now.
like the episode of the show, and it's directed by, Ryan Johnson. It just seems like he he just knows what he's doing. I feel like when it comes to these sort of
Interesting.
like interesting, like quirky out there kind of things, because I
He has
wouldn't
really
say any of
unique.
his movies are like masterpieces or anything, but
Mhm.
Yeah.
they're just good, like
Yeah.
good stuff. He just makes good stuff.
I mean, I'm sold, so.
Hmm.
Uh, I did have one thing to say. So we've talked about a few movies that were like inspiration for this movie, and I think Ryan Johnson called on like a whole bunch of movies to get like key elements and just like little things from, which is
Mm-hmm.
great. But he has specifically called out a movie that he thinks if you really liked Knives Out that you'll like this one too. So just for anyone who's looking for anything similar, it's called The Last of Sheila. So if you liked Knives Out, go check out The Last of Sheila and let us know if you liked it.
I've
I don't
never
know
even
what
heard of
that
that,
is.
so maybe I'll watch it too.
Yeah.
A 1973 murder mystery movie.
Mm.
Very cool. Directors, like people who make movies, they just know so many other fucking movies. It's so
Yeah.
crazy.
Yeah.
Like anytime someone talks about their favorite movies and their director, I'm like, I have no idea what that is or what you're talking about.
Okay. Are y'all ready to rate this movie?
Yeah,
Yes.
let's do it.
Okay. We do letterbox rating, so 0 to 5 stars. Matt, you are up first.
Okay, I think I'm gonna go 4 on this one. I think it's
Nice.
just like a very solid, like well, it's really good, entertaining, like, and just a great movie overall. I enjoyed it a ton.
Yeah. Yeah. Liz?
So I gave this one 3 out of 5 stars. And it's a good movie. It's
Hmm.
by no means like the best movie I've ever seen, in my opinion. And I think too, watching it for the second time kind of swayed that a little bit. I think if I was watching it for the first time, it might have gotten a higher rating.
Hmm.
But watching it for the second time, like I knew what was gonna happen. Some of it felt a little slow because I was like, okay, like let's get to it. So that's why I gave it 3 out of 5 stars. But I still did really enjoy it. I just don't think like it has the same feel to it after watching it the first time.
So you're telling me you think Clue was a better movie than this movie?
Again, that was the first time I saw Clue. So
Okay.
I think if I
Okay.
watched it for the second time, it would score lower.
Yeah, the viewing experience on a movie like this is way different the second time.
That's so true. Because you
And
like,
if you
know what's
saw it for
gonna
the first
happen.
time in theaters, you probably had a way different experience too, because there's just so much to look at. Like, I have a big enough TV, but like if I saw it like larger than life, like that would be
Hmm.
so cool. But watching it for the second time, I was just kind of like, okay.
Yeah.
Fair. Okay, I gave this movie, similar to Matt, 4 stars. Super solid movie. Enjoy it every time I watch it. That's basically it.
Let's talk about what the real critics think, or just like the world in general. So I think overall this movie was really well liked. So on
Yes.
Letterboxd, it's got an average of 4 out of 5 stars. Rotten Tomatoes, the tomato meter, which is the critic meter, got a 97%, and the audience
Okay,
scores a 92.
we didn't talk about that. 97% is very high for a tomato
Yeah.
Yeah,
meter
that's
score.
crazy.
I mean,
Yeah,
the
like
movie is really well made. Everything that we said throughout this episode like points to the fact that it's a fantastic movie.
mhm.
I think like some of the stuff you brought up earlier, Courtney, about like, and you did too, like Liz, like the intentionality of some of the filmmaking is something
Mhm.
Mhm.
critics I feel like probably really latched onto it, and it just
Mhm.
being like a smart, well acted story too, while also being like really funny at the same
Yeah.
time. Like,
Mhm.
um, but I think like the critics probably also latched on to the fact that everything in this movie just like looks great. It's like really well shot. Like,
There's no plot holes. Like,
yeah. Hmm.
yeah. So IMDb got 7.9 out of 10, and then 89% of Google users liked the movie. So overall, great scores. I think we scored it pretty well.
Mhm.
But yeah,
Yeah,
great,
quality
Yeah,
great
movie,
this
movie.
is
quality story, very entertaining.
one people like a lot. And I think the sequel to this movie is a good one too. Like it definitely carries the spirit on while telling a new story, and kind of like we said with the casting of this one, where it's like sure there's a lot of stars, but they're all picked very intentionally, and like
Mm-hmm.
it's the same thing with Glass Onion to me. Like there's a lot of movie stars in that movie, but they're all there for a reason.
Mm-hmm. Is Glass Onion like a sequel to this movie, or like it's a
No, it's
standalone
just like a
story?
new like story that he gets called on um
Okay.
to do. One thing that is kind of interesting is for it is like it is sort of like a pandemic movie. So there is
Oh.
like some sort of like the pandemic plays a part sort of in it.
There's like a
Like
nod to the
especially at the
pandemic in it.
beginning. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Interesting.
Interesting.
That's one of
Yeah,
the
I
things
haven't
is like
seen it yet, so
yeah, y'all should definitely watch it. I would be interested to see. Like I feel like most people who like the first one, I think this one, the first one still is better. Um, but the second one has some good stuff. Like it's really well crafted too.
I'm excited to check it out.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Well, that is all we have. So, Matt, thank you so much for joining again on the podcast. People love you and we love you. So, thank you for joining.
Yeah, I always, I guess, second time around, just really like doing this. So thanks for having me back.
Yay.
Yeah. Okay. Bye.
Bye,
Bye
Matt.
bye.
Okay, so we just said goodbye to Matt, but it's also time for us to say goodbye to all of you. Thank you so much for tuning in to our Knives Out episode. Be sure to leave us a rating or review, drop us a comment on YouTube, and leave us an answer to our poll and QA section on Spotify.
You can find more information about the podcast and our whole podography on our website, bcritics.com, or find links to all the things we just mentioned on our Linktree and the episode show notes.
Next week, we're going to be talking about Shutter Island, which is more of a psychological, slow burn murder mystery, and it's way more serious.
So be sure to subscribe and follow so you don't miss it. You can find us on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and Google Podcasts.
All right. Bye, guys. We'll see y'all next Monday.
Bye, guys.